Morning class, we've been looking at the Versailles Treaty of 1919. We discussed the terms of the Versailles Treaty in our previous lessons. We said that Germans had to accept the blame of the war. This was known as the War Guilt Clause. Germany had to pay reparations. That is to say, Germany had to pay for the damages of the war amounting to £6,600,000. Germany, colonies and territories were snatched away from them. There also had to be a formation of the League of Nations, as well as they had to disarm. Germans were only allowed a maximum of 100,000 soldiers. However, this did not go well with the Germans. So today we look at the reactions to the Versailles Treaty. By this I mean, how did Germans receive the Versailles Treaty? The Versailles Treaty was announced on 7th May in 1919. When the Versailles Treaty was announced, it left the Germans horrified. It means that Germans were shocked by the terms of the Versailles Treaty. The new German government, however, refused to sign at first, but they had no choice. Eventually, they signed the treaty on 28th June 1919. As a way of protesting the new terms of the Versailles Treaty, the German Navy sank its own ships in protest. By protesting, I mean they demonstrated by sinking its own ships. This just tells you how Germany were not happy with the terms of the Versailles Treaty. So some of the consequences or result of the Versailles Treaty include political violence. There was a hyperinflation, as well as there was a conflict in the Ruhr region. The Germans, it should be noted that they hated the Versailles Treaty with almost every part of their heart, every part of their being. They hated it so much that they were willing to do anything against the Versailles Treaty. So, as a result, in 1920, there was an attempted revolution. Right-wing opponents of Ebert's government could not bear the treaty. The rising was known as the Kapp Push, was defeated by a general strike by the Berlin workers, which paralyzed essential services such as power and transport. So there was a general strike, which was known as the Kapp Push. This was done by the Berlin workers. This paralyzed the transport and the power sectors. Though the revolution itself was defeated, political violence remained a constant threat. Numerous political assassinations or attempted assassinations were put in place. For instance, in the summer of 1922, German Foreign Minister Walther Rathenau was murdered by extremists. And in November 1923, Adolf Hitler led an attempted rebellion in Munich, which was also known as the Munich Push. You can see this more on this when you read. You should read your books on page 253. You read more about this attempted rebellion by Adolf Hitler. This itself, it was defeated. Though Adolf Hitler was put on trial, it was a light trial that he went unpunished. Germans hated or shared his hatred for the Versailles Treaty. So the Germans itself, they did not like the Versailles Treaty. They considered it what we call a forced diktat. By a forced diktat, what I'm trying to say is that the Versailles Treaty itself was forced on her. They had no choice. but to accept the terms of the Versailles Treaty. And at some point, it was feared that a war might break out. On top of that, remember, Germans, none of the Germans, none of the losing camp or the losing side were represented at the Paris Peace Conference, where the Versailles Treaty was drawn. For now, I would like us to stop there. In the next lesson, we'll be looking at another consequence of the terms of the Versailles Treaty, which was hyperinflation. For today, we have looked at political violence as one of the major consequences of the Versailles Treaty. By consequences, remember, I mean the result of the Versailles Treaty. For today, we stop here. Thank you very much.